Hello my friends, how are you doing? Today I'm going to do a feedback for the challenge of week 20 and also week 21 instead of a live stream. As you know, I'm still on my trip in Asia. By the way, it's not a holiday trip, it's not a vacation trip. I'm here, but I'm creating content for you as usual. It's more of a test of if I can do that, what kind of benefits or downside it has. One of the downsides is that often I don't have good internet, so I can't do live streams here. So this is basically a replacement for that. Okay, let's get started. So the challenge of week 20 was that I asked you to either do something with the gold tutorial, which was this one where I show you how to make a gold or chrome look of a face, and then we have also the Black Paris look, which was this kind of tutorial here, where you have this look where most of the picture is black and white, but in a darker, more saturated, darker way, graphic kind of look, and then you have only these orange tones looking through, which is a very good combination, looks really pretty. I think most of the people went with the Black Paris look, so let's have a look here. The first one is from Niels, and of course I ask you to also post the original picture, which is important so we have a certain comparison and I can give you better feedback. So you can see here, this looks really nice, it's a very cool effect. One thing that stands out a little bit is that here on the cheek you can see there is less of this kind of orange tone that you have here in the face, so it looks a little bit like, and of course this is maybe based on the light source if we look at the original picture, but it looks like there's a lot of orange in the face and then suddenly on the cheek here there is nothing, so it looks a little bit like it's painted onto the picture. So maybe fix that by just painting it in. Let's have a look at the original picture here real quick as a comparison. And you can see here that there is more of this orange light here in the face and then less here on the cheek. So this is why the effect comes. And you can also see, I mean, if you look at the complete picture, it kind of still looks like these colors are painted in. You can see over here on the phone, and then suddenly we have this kind of pink value here, and there's a pink value here. So I'm kind of surprised, I'm a little bit puzzled where the orange light is coming from in that area, but not back here, which is very close to that. Even here you can see the pink is starting right there, but not here on the face of the telephone. That is kind of strange. So maybe that was painted in afterwards, and this is why the result also looks a little bit strange. But overall, as you can see, the effect, and you can see this deeply saturated gray black, graphite black, is a really nice combination to the orange. Okay, let's go on to the next picture here. This is by Wolfgang. He went for the gold effect just on the teeth, which is absolutely okay. Down here he has the original picture also included, and this is a really cool thing you can do with that. You have also seen in my tutorial when I painted onto that mask on the face, so it's only visible in this area, that some people in the comments said, hey, this could also be used as a mask, and yes it can. So you can paint this on as a mask, and then I would suggest to make a second layer in between that gold effect layer and the original face and just paint in some shadow there. So you have a little bit of a distance, just a very slight, a very thin shadow, maybe a little bit thicker shadow in certain parts where you think the mask is a little bit more distant from the face. And in that way you can make a believable effect where you just have a golden mask on your face, or you use it like in this case where you make these golden teeth, and you can see it looks really pretty, looks really good. And also he used these kind of, how can I say, light effects here, light reflections, which is very nice and gives you even a stronger impression that these are gold teeth and has this kind of bling effect. So it also leans itself to what the fun and funniness, the kind of, how do you say, caricature style of this image. So that's pretty cool. Really good work by Wolfgang. Thank you very much for that. Let's go for the next one. This is by Alexandra. Very nice combination, as you can see here, from the different values. I feel like a little bit of the areas back here look like they are still green, although this is probably a visual illusion. I think this is more of a yellow and orange, but because grass has a yellow part in it that mostly we don't see because we look at grass and think it's green, but it's actually green and yellow at the same time. It might feel like it still has a little bit of green value back in here, but it doesn't. I don't think it has. And it really looks cool. Very nice. Also, you can see here on the fur of the goat, this heightened contrast, which is also part of the effect, gives it more of this kind of sharpness of making things stand out and give it more presence. So that's really cool work from Alexandra. Here is the original picture. And as you can see here also, of course, which I didn't think about, is there's leaves on the ground. Of course, these leaves are orange. So this is what that is, right? That we see in the edited picture here. You see these little areas here that are a little bit blurry because of the bokeh of the lens. And yeah, this is what that is. So it's really interesting to see that. One thing you could do, if that is something you want to reduce a little bit maybe, is to just paint that out with an extra layer, for example, an HSL layer with the saturation set to 0. Then you invert the mask of that layer and just paint it into the areas that you want to desaturate, so you don't have this kind of orange or yellow in that area. This is something you could do just to have a little bit more control where the orange is coming in and where the black and white is happening in the picture, right? And this effect also lives from having most of the picture in black and white and then just some parts that you want to point out to the viewer in orange. So too many orange spots, as we see in the next examples, can actually be a little bit too much. In this case, it's beautiful. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So here we have one from Trude. And this is one of these cases where I would say there's a little bit too much going on with the orange values. Now, of course, you can do whatever you want in your artistic view. If you say, this is what I wanted to have, then that's absolutely okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm just saying, like, for this kind of black Paris look, the orange is a little bit too much to achieve that kind of look. But you can also do, like I said, other kinds of looks, right? We have a little bit of a problem here with color banding in the background, which is, of course, happening because you have a very soft blending. You can see from a light blue to even lighter blue and then into white. So color banding comes from that right now, when you have only these blue values, it is enough to make it seem smooth, but still there aren't that many blue values between up here for the light blue and down here for the lighter blue, right? So as soon as you start to edit that, as soon as you start to apply effects to that, you reduce the number of values even more, and this is where the banding comes in, because the banding is basically stepping in between these values, so there aren't enough values left, so it is filled up in one area with one value and then just stepping over into the next area with another value of that hue, right? And so this is where these steps come from. This is where this kind of banding effect comes from, right? And in this case, for the Black Paris look, I would actually say it would be better to make the sky black and white, to make it gray, a nice gray blend, because then I think there should be enough values there. If we look at the blue of the original picture, and then just use these lights here on the buildings, and there is still a lot of them, so you can even reduce that, like I said before, with the mask. Make a HSL layer, invert the mask on the HSL layer, and then paint out or paint in the areas that you want to have black and white, and just like highlight some parts, like this special skyscraper here that is like a very tall pyramid, for example, and the roads in the background, stuff like that. Something that you want the eye of the viewer to be catched by, to be the focus of the pictures. This is a really good technique to guide the eye. But if there is too much, then it's kind of getting lost. It still has this kind of nice look, but at the same time, you don't know anymore where to look, right? So the focus of that and the purpose of reducing it to basically just two values, the black and white and then the orange, is kind of getting lost, right? Okay, let's go on to the next one. which is by Shari. I hope I pronounced that the right way. And he or she, I'm not sure right now, said that this is used on natural pictures, on nature pictures, which is a really good idea. It's really interesting. I didn't think about that you can use that, because of course there's orange and red in nature. So that's really interesting. It's very nice, especially with the butterfly. It works good. You can see here again, we have some values here in the background. So you can think about, do you want to keep them? Do you want to remove them? So there is just something on the butterfly and maybe a little bit on these flowers in the foreground, but not in the background, stuff like that. And also then, and this is, I would say, a little bit of a problem with Affinity Photo. This might not be like you doing anything wrong. This is just like how the adjustments in Affinity Photo work, is that often it is kind of hard to set the range of a value. So you can see here on the right side with the flowers that suddenly it stops, and then these values here are black and white, although you would think they should be included. But because it is so hard to set a soft fading out value in Affinity Photo, often it is cut off, and it has a little bit like this bending effect where the effect is just lost at a certain point. And there's basically, I didn't really find any way myself to get rid of that, to get a really soft blend. So often it's kind of hard to use these kind of effects in Affinity Photo. Let's look at the original picture. You can see here, actually in this case, it is actually the case that the pink is up here, and then it fades into this kind of, what is that? Like a, I mean, I would still say it's a very light pink. It might also be white, but I don't think that on the flower, if you would zoom in on the flower, that you have this really hard edge. And this is what I mean. You can see here where I point with my mouse, you have this very like boom, and it's gone. It doesn't fade out. It's not soft. It doesn't look natural. It's just like fading out in a like very hard edge. And this is kind of a problem, that you can't make that softer. This is something Serif needs to work on to make this easier to set these fading edges basically for these effects, right? Okay, so this is no fault of yours. It's a fault of the software, I would say. Okay, here's the next one by Wolfgang. Oh, very nice. Okay, pretty cool. Interesting. And again, it has a lot of orange in there. You can see here there's a little bit of the bending here, a little bit of this kind of stepping effect. So like I said, it's kind of hard to get rid of that. But still, looks pretty cool. A little bit much orange, like I said. You could, for example, in this case, like think about what would you like to focus on in that case. So you could say maybe make everything here like the surface of the building and the car and the street surface and everything black and white, and then keep the orange here on this kind of neon sign, and maybe some of the inside of the bar, stuff like that. I say, okay, I want to focus on these little details that are happening in the picture, but the rest isn't that important. So I kind of make it less eye-catching by keeping it in the black and white area of the picture, right? So that would be a possibility, right? Okay, we can actually let's give this a quick try here before we just talk and don't actually do it. Let's see how that would actually look. Okay, let's go here, File, New from Clipboard, and then I will simply make an Hsl adjustment. As you can see here, Hsl, and I pull this down so everything is black and white now. And now what I'm doing is I go here to Layer and Invert, and this is going to invert the mask, because the adjustment layer of course has nothing in it, so it will invert the mask instead, right? So now everything is visible again. And now I can start to use my brush. This is way too big. Let's make this a little bit smaller here and set it the opacity 100%. I will set my color to white, and you can see now I can use this to paint out areas that I don't want to have. And so now we can really decide where do we want to have that. So let's say maybe keep the car. How about that? Let's go down here. I make my brush a little bit smaller to paint out these areas here. I'm not going to be super exact right now because this is just like a little presentation on what you could do. But you can see now we have more focus on the building in the middle. If we do that, you could say maybe paint out the road. I'm not sure. Or maybe paint out the road around these areas where there is no light reflection, like this. You see? So we only have kind of this light. You might want to do it a little bit different. This looks a little bit strange though. Let's reduce the opacity here a bit. And then I will go over to black to paint in some of these border areas, so get a little bit more of the orange. And so you can see with that, we have focused much more onto the building and the things that are happening inside of the building and the text up here. You can even maybe reduce the sides here, just focus on the text. So you can be really free. You can be really playful on how you want to apply that into your picture. Let's just for the fun of it, reduce the effect. Whoa, I did that wrong, sorry. Let's go back to the mask here. Reduce the effect around this, so we just keep it on the text, like so. And just to see if that gives us some kind of extra, I don't know, effect, some extra attention. So create it in a way where you think like, okay, this feels good to me. This is what I want to do with that. You can see I feel like that's more interesting. This is more like focused on the text and is like, it tells more of a story. I always feel like telling a story is a big part of editing and guiding the eye to just point out for the viewer which are the parts that are interesting to you. What kind of thing do you want to tell at that moment is an interesting way to create a picture and makes the editing process at the same time easier because you can focus on certain things rather than to try to edit everything in the picture in the same way. Just pick out the parts that you think is the more important and edit that, and then try to fade out the rest and make it less important so people don't even look at it, right? Okay, let's go on with the review here. What else do we have? So thank you, Wolfgang, for that entry. And there's only one more. So this challenge wasn't, I think a lot of people, by the way, also said they didn't get a notification about that challenge. So that is strange. I don't know, maybe Facebook changed something about their algorithms again, so they don't notify people. I'm not sure. Please check the group and see if there are sticky posts, if there are announcement posts, stuff like that. All right. So this is pretty cool, this one by Bart. Really nice. And this way you can see here it's very focused just on very selective parts of the picture. Basically just the skin parts. You can see here the face, the hands, a little bit of the hair. Back here is another bicycle rider, also the face and the hands. And you can see how this, when it's so reduced, when there is not too much orange, you really only look at these parts. And for me personally, I mean, maybe it's different for different people, but for me personally, if I have the feeling they understand the intentions of the artist and I know that I'm looking at the right stuff and I'm thinking about the right stuff at the moment, I feel more happy with the picture. I feel more comfortable with the experience of looking at the artwork because there is less of a chance that I'm missing something or misunderstanding something. So guiding the eye can also be very soothing to the viewer. All right, enough of that. Let's go on to review the challenge of week 21. And this was where I asked you to look at my tutorial for this kind of double exposure effect. It's actually kind of a triple exposure if you think about it, because you have the portrait and then you have the picture inside of the portrait, and then you have also the background, which can be a completely different picture if you want to, or the same picture scaled up in a different way, blurred out as I show you in the tutorial. Okay, so let's have a look here, and you have been very creative with this. Let's see, is there some picture here? No, this is just a discussion. So this is the first one by Marcus, and he did something different. So he didn't do this kind of picture inside of the silhouette. He just put the silhouette on top of the picture, which is also nice. It's a different kind of effect than I show in my tutorial, but that's okay. It's very playful. It's very nice. It's a very interesting effect. It fits very well. The dancing girl, the character, with the landscape, with the clouds, with the happiness of the nature. Really beautiful combination. Also, in this case, if you look at the hands, how they flow, and the clouds, how they flow, the pictures mix really well. You can really feel the dance moving outwards into the nature, getting picked up by the elements, and everything has this kind of harmony that flows together, right? So that's really interesting, and I think this is also one of the hardest parts, to find pictures that fit together to make this kind of double exposure effect, because often when you see these amazing pictures online, that is less the technique and more the selection of the right pictures and how they tell a story, how they flow together, how they combine certain things. For example, when you take the silhouette of nature, of a bear in the background, what kind of foreground would you use for that? What kind of person would you expect to be in nature? Or maybe if it's not a person, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a silhouette of a wolf or something other, right? So there's a lot of potential in this kind of technique to tell a story and to make elements flow together, connect them, because also, and you can see this also in this example here, where you put something into the head of a person, it has this effect that you imagine the person thinking about that, dreaming about that, maybe longing for that, right? So in this case, the woman in the picture is dreaming about being at the beach, maybe missing her boyfriend. You make up a story in your mind of why there's a connection, but what you do in your mind is that you try to create a connection, right? So that's interesting about that technique too. Okay, let's go to the next picture. Thank you, Marcus. The next one is by Richard, and this is interesting effect here. You can see you have the silhouette here. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman wearing a hat, and then you have this gate in the middle. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is in Delhi, right? Yeah, it says actually India here. I have been standing under this gate about 10 years ago. All right, Richard did a really cool job. You can see here some birds flying away out of the picture into the background through the side of the silhouette. Beautiful connection of background and foreground. You can also see here that there's some clouds coming out of the picture and connecting the background and the foreground with each other. So that is very nice. One little thing you could maybe change if you want to is that you can see here that the corners of the silhouette are getting very bright, so it's kind of hard to see at that side here, especially where it's also covered up with clouds. So you might, and this is something I show here in the tutorial, you might want to paint a little bit with dodge and burn onto the picture you're using inside of the silhouette to make these areas a little bit darker, to give a little bit more contrast towards the background. And this is also something I'm doing here in this kind of picture that I show you in the tutorial, that I select where I put the background. So I have these kind of brightness, darkness areas, so they support the silhouette and really give you a clear reading of the shape of the head and what is going on, because this is also part of the silhouette, that you are understanding what is going on in the image, right? Okay. Thank you very much, Richard, for this picture. Very cool. Let's go on to the next one by Antoniette. Oh, sorry, I'm reading that wrong. Antonietta? I'm so sorry. I think I'm pronouncing that completely wrong. Okay, anyways, here we have the picture. Very nice work. You also use that kind of brushed metal texture that I used as a grunge effect to make the background a little bit more alive, give it a little bit more bite. So that's interesting. And very nice way to contrast the foreground with the background. You can see here that you can very easily read the shape of the picture, where the hairline is, where the eyes are, even the eyebrows, where the nose is. So this also, again, gives you more satisfaction when you look at the picture and you know what's going on, because this is a problem often with silhouettes, that because they are two-dimensional, often things get hidden inside of the silhouette and you start basically you stop losing traction of what is actually going on, and this makes it then not that satisfying to look at the silhouette if you kind of puzzling of what is it I'm actually looking at, right? So in this case, really beautiful work with that. And also I like the flowers inside of the hat and how they are placed. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know if this was by accident or you planned for that, but it's kind of interesting how this leaf of the blossom also splits the lips in half. So it kind of gives an it kind of flows with the shape of what is actually going on in the picture. Maybe scale it up a little bit because we have this bright part here right at the chin. So it's kind of like cut off a little bit, just a tiny bit. So maybe scaling up a little bit more to make everything pink here could be a better idea, right? But other than that, it's really interesting, very nice. I also like how this green flows over the shoulders like actually clothing, you know, like there is some kind of, I don't know, shirt or blanket in the back of the neck, right? Really, very nice, interesting idea. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Thank you for this entry. Oh, interesting. What do we have here? So this is by Huge. Okay, this is oh god. What's the name? Fukushi? No, sorry, that's something different. You will tell me in the comments, I'm sure. Okay, anyways, so we have here the silhouette. Really interesting. You put a lot of detail in this, which is also possibility. Like also some people pointed out, or I think at least one comment pointed out that I didn't put too much facial features into my version here. But it's not always necessary. Sometimes you just want to have a good look at the picture inside of the silhouette. But as you can see here, it can also be very interesting to have not just a silhouette, but a contrasting portrait of a person. And here the very important part is that you have parts that are actually very dark and then also parts that are very bright that you can use for the effect, because otherwise it's gonna be very complicated to see the picture and to blend the picture onto the head, right? So, and this is also why I did this tutorial with specifically silhouettes, because silhouettes are very dark and you can, because of that, use them as a very easy mask to put the picture in there, while this effect here can be a lot more complex and make it also at the same time a lot more difficult to find pictures that fit together in the right way, right? Okay, so yeah, very interesting effect here. It's interesting that you decided to basically have a high contrast version of the picture inside of the head, and then it feels like it is the exact same scale of the picture, but just blurry and low contrast and rather bright. So that is kind of interesting combination, but still looks good, looks nice, very creative, absolutely. And also like this kind of everything is either gray or has this interesting teal blue in it. Very nice idea. Okay, thank you very much, Huge. Let's go on to the next one, which is from Udo. All right, so what do we have here? Okay, so we have a helicopter silhouette, and then we have another helicopter inside. That's interesting. One thing you can see here is that the helicopter silhouette is very detailed, and this makes it more complex. So you have all these little details down here, which, I mean, you can see that it's a helicopter, especially when you zoom in a little bit, you make it big like this. In a smaller version like this, you can see here, if it's just a thumbnail, it's kind of hard to see if this is a helicopter or what kind of orientation it has. Also in this case, the helicopter could be pointing away from us or towards us. It's kind of not really like visible to see. Based on these elements here and here, it might actually be the same helicopter. I'm not sure. Maybe not, because these metal bars here. I'm not sure what you call them. They are further apart in this picture than in this picture. So it's probably two different pictures of helicopters. In this case, I would say for the picture you used inside of the silhouette, maybe a different picture would be more interesting. Because you basically just repeat information. So you duplicate information. You have already the helicopter as the silhouette, and then there's another helicopter inside, which doesn't give me additional information of the story, right? So maybe to have something other inside that gives me more information of what is happening here would be more interesting. So for example, you could have a mountain inside, or you can have maybe a scene of an accident inside, or a scene of a attack inside, stuff like that. So you know, okay, this is a war scene, this is a rescue helicopter, this is a expedition helicopter, stuff like that. Make a picture of a rainforest, for example, stuff like that. Gives me some additional information of what is actually happening with the helicopter. In this case, we have a helicopter, and then we have another helicopter, which doesn't really give us a connection on is there a relation between these two? Like, are they trying to meet? Are they hunting each other? It's kind of confusing, right? So you could think about maybe putting something other in there. Again, this is just a suggestion. If you think this is what you wanted to achieve, that's also fine. That's also good. All right. Thank you very much, Udo. Let's go on to the next one. It's the same one again. I think it's some grunge edit. Okay, there is some grunge edit. Oh yeah, here in the background. Okay, interesting. Let's go on to the next one by Joanna. There we go. So we have, this might be an apple. I'm not quite sure. Does the text say anything? There's a nice proverb that says, in the heart of every apple is an orchard. So here it is. Oh, interesting. I've never heard that. Is it? Am I reading that right? Sorry, I have to search that real quick. Orchard. What's an orchard? An orchard is an international plantation of trees. Oh, okay. It's not an orchid. It's an orchard. It's like a, yeah, plantation, basically. Interesting. I've never heard of that. Okay. Whoops. Sorry. Made it small. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure how to respond to this right now. You could maybe help it a little bit by selecting another picture of an apple that is more apple-like. Maybe also have this classic apple leaf you often see in pictures, this kind of one leaf sticking out near the stem of the apple to give a little bit more information about that this is actually an apple. I guess apple enthusiasts probably look at the blossoms here and say, yes, that's an apple tree. I can see that right away. But for example, I wouldn't know if these are blossoms of apples or peaches or something else. All right, very interesting. Okay. I don't know what else to say at that moment. I'm sorry. Okay, let's go on to the last one here by Shalap. I hope I pronounced that right. Very nice combination, really cool. Again, a silhouette with a little bit more detail. You can see here with the glasses, you can see the beard down here, but it's just a hint of detail. So you know, okay, there is glasses and they have these reflections, which also makes it a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more interesting through these kind of reflections. And then again, you decided to do it in the same way as the other contribution, to use the background layer in the same size, basically, but just make it more brighter and less contrast, and also less saturation. So that's a good idea, interesting idea. And it's kind of also fading, which is interesting, that you can see here in this area it's much brighter and has less saturation, and then over here it gets darker, has more saturation. You can see there's a deep blue in here, and at the same time, and this is the really important part here, the hairline, you can see here, I guess Hsl has used this kind of effect I showed you with dodge and burn to make this edge darker, so you can really see that line, because you can see when you look at the sky, if you wouldn't have this kind of dodge and burn here to make this edge darker, the blue here and here would be very similar and you would be hardly able to see the edge. But because this has been darkened, now you can easily see that, and this makes it a lot more satisfying to look at it. Another effect I really like here that you have created is this kind of shadow behind it that makes it look like it is a picture printed out and it's bending up a little bit from the surface it is laying on. So it gives kind of a 3D effect, gives it kind of a material look to it. So that's really nice. So yeah, pretty cool effect. I also like these little bokeh balls you put down here. That's also pretty cool. Very nice combination. Cool colors, very interesting flow also from the combination of all the elements in here. So yeah, pretty cool work. Very, very nice. Thank you very much for that. I think that's everything for today. Yeah, please look out again before we end the video. Look out for the sticky post. So if you go into the group, the sticky post should be at the top position. And then also, if you don't see any announcements recently, click here on the announcement tab where you can see all the announcements. They should usually be in order that they have been posted in, so you can find different challenges, you can find my tutorials, you can find update videos from my trip to Asia right now. So I give you a little bit of context of what I'm doing right now, right? Okay. Thank you very much for watching and see you in my next tutorial. Bye!